Welcome to FS Podcasts. We are a student initiative from Frankfurt School of Finance and Management, a business school located in Frankfurt, Germany. In our podcast, we like to bring different guests with interesting background to talk to us and share their opinion on various diverse topics.
Okay, so we're here with another episode today. I'm Madhur, your co-host with the main host today.
I'm not main host. We're both hosts, that's it. We're delighted to have Sorah Kim.
Yes.
Sorah Kim, am I saying it right?
Yes.
I do have a problem with names. So I do have a problem like saying names properly. I really want to get good at it.
I like to say that my name is Sarah, but with an O.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah. Of course.
Okay.
But I'm not your Starbucks barista, so.
Okay, so that you don't have a future as a barista.
Yeah, I don't. But I have bottled water. I'm just going to like Sorah with plus O.
Yeah.
Is there any other, what's the most surprising things you've ever seen in Starbucks when people write your name?
I've seen, honestly, I probably, Sarah.
Sarah.
I've seen Sonia.
Sonia?
Yeah, I
Right.
don't know. I've seen like Sorah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So after a while, I just go by Kim, or I make up a name for whoever I feel like calling myself today.
Yeah. Just see back there.
Yeah.
So Sorah is a brand and marketing consultant, strategy consultant, specialist in beauty, health and wellness.
Mm-hmm.
And she's here in Frankfurt today to give a speech at the TED event at Frankfurt School. And we're more than delighted to have you here in the episode. And we'd like to get to know you a little bit more better.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit better, yeah. And and Sorah's basically telling us, approaching the topic, how to overcome or how to get out of a 9-to-5 job and do your own thing and embrace what you actually love. Yeah. So what was the moment for you to say, I don't want to work anymore in this job and I want to do my own thing? And how was that for you? Can you just...
Yeah, it's, it wasn't like I woke up one morning and I was like, I'm going to quit my job.
I'm done. I'm done with you.
I wish it was that dramatic. But really, it came in signs for me. Yeah. So when I first started my career working in corporate, I had my very first burnout within a year. Wow. And that was from working a lot. And interestingly enough, that first time I burned out, so you can tell it was multiple times that I did. The first time that I did, it manifested into an anxiety disorder. And so I had to actually go on medication for it. I had to go through therapy. And of course, this is all like secretively. No one at my job knew. I hardly told my family. Yeah. So that was kind of the first sign. But of course, I was like 21, 22 years old. And I was like, no, I've come this far. I'm not going to give up. So I just try to find the quick fix for it. I managed to figure out ways to cope with it for, another 5 years. And another 5 years. And the funny thing is that I think the way I found my quick fix was I just distracted myself even more.
Oh, wow.
That I kind of had this very intense work ethic.
Yeah, some get it.
Yeah. And so 5 years later, by that point, I was actually the head of marketing for a small beauty brand. And I was 27. So to me, I think that's actually quite young to be taking on a role like that. Yeah. And it was an immense amount of pressure. I have no idea why they wanted to give me this job, but they did. And shortly after that promotion, it got too heavy for me, and I burned out again. And I started seeing the signs again. It hit me faster.
Was cycle?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
I felt like at that point I was like, okay, I feel like a hamster on a wheel, and the quality of life that I was living just wasn't worth it. So that was, those years I was working at what I would call my dream job. And so I thought, I think this is time for me to make a move. But I didn't quit my job to do my own thing. I quit my job to then go to another company that seemed to have a better work-life balance. And I thought, okay, this will just be like my vacation period while working. Yeah. Okay. And so I was at this other company for about a year and a half. And during that year and a half, that's when it started coming to me, okay, this is kind of the same thing over and over again. It wasn't as intense at all, but I had a lot of energy that I wanted to use, but I was putting it towards something that I just didn't feel passionately or really purposeful about. Yeah. And so in that year and a half, I kind of committed that I need to figure out what it is that I want to do with my life. And so after that second burnout, it was pretty much, I figured out that I didn't have a purpose that I was really driving towards or really anchoring myself in. And I embarked on a journey of figuring out who I was, and finding out what I thought I was put on this earth to do. So it's kind of a culmination of events that led me to that point of leaving my job.
And how do you define what you do today? Because then after you left your job, so you spent like 1.5 years trying to figure out your purpose. And when was the moment you said, well, I found it, I want to do this, and what was that at the moment?
You know, that's another one of those things where it took some time.
Yeah.
And honestly, during that time, I had a lot of resistance to actually even claiming that I would be a brand and marketing strategist.
Yeah. All right.
There was a bit of, I think, imposter syndrome that you know, was coming up for me. And I think the way that I figured it out and finally came to terms with it was kind of practicing and taking a look at this idea of what a brand and marketing consultant could be from different angles. So for a long time, I had this stereotypical idea of what a brand and marketing consultant does.
Yeah.
And it felt very boring to me.
What do you thought it was?
So it's branding and marketing, you know, it's working with brands, figuring out, you know, how are they going to come up and, you know, it's more than just ads, of course.
Yeah, of course.
It's more than just the marketing tactics, but it's really about the entity of the brand.
Yeah.
And it can get a little dry because the thing is that when you are learning about marketing, it's really about the white space opportunity. And it's everything becomes, you know, a space of being an opportunist. I did lots of mappings to figure out, okay, there's a brand that does XYZ.
Yeah.
There's a brand that doesn't do other things. So that's the brand that we're going to be. So it's kind of like almost a process of elimination to figure out what a brand was going to stand for and how they were going to present themselves. So it was very much, it wasn't very creative in terms of what I was doing beforehand.
Yeah.
Creative in terms of seeking a solution, but it wasn't really coming from a standpoint of intuition, which is the way that I like to work.
So that's how you see today what is your job?
Yes, exactly. It's very much about the connection. So I like to work with founders. So typically the startup brands.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because I firmly believe that founders and what they bring to the world is essentially a byproduct of how they perceive the world. It's how they have witnessed some of society's tensions, and for whatever reason, they felt that they had a calling to come up with this product or this brand or this company. And I think that's a really beautiful art form, so to speak, and it's a lot more intuitive than, you know, mapping out and doing positioning charts to figure out, okay, this is a white space opportunity. Granted, there are founders who are totally, you know, commercial. You know, there's a commercial side of them, and that's what they go for. But those aren't the people who I prefer to work with.
Oh.
Yeah, but while this time you were looking at, you're trying to find your purpose, most of the people that we've heard about till now who did something like this, kind of like disconnected from the whole world and went to somewhere remote and spend their time alone to figure out what they want.
Like meditating and
like Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg, they went to India, Rishikesh, I think. Yeah, and so, but you said you came back to brand and marketing itself. So were you still connected to that field when you were kind of figuring out the purpose, or were you completely disconnected at that time?
So I was still working at my full-time career when I was doing this. I wish I
Yeah.
could say, you know, I took a 1-year sabbatical and traveled the world
most
to
people do
figure
it,
it out.
Yeah.
You know, that does sound like a more glamorous story. But, you know, instead what I did is I found a way for me to somewhat disconnect myself by going to this other company that I knew would just be, I mean, I was doing 30% of the work that I was doing at my previous job at this new job while still getting paid the same. And so I wanted to find a way to buy myself time and energy back. So even though I was working full-time, admittedly, I didn't feel like I was spending a lot of my energy and my brain power towards my job. I was able to take a step back and actually take a look at myself. You know, I did a lot of those things. I picked up meditation. When I went on vacations, that was my moments of solitude. I joined a mastermind group with a group of my friends to make it a discipline to actually take a look within talk about myself, and really exercise my voice and kind of drill down what are the things that really excite me. Also, at the same time, before I actually left my job and I knew that that was the path I was going down, I still had to figure out how I was going to make money. I live in one of the most expensive cities in the world. Like, it just wasn't an option for me to not have some sort of revenue coming in. And so, and so I actually tested out, what could it look like if I became a consultant?
Yeah.
Can I actually do this? Because also working in a corporate setting, you're kind of told what to do.
Yeah.
You might come up with an idea, which is great, but there's also a process of validation that it goes through. So you kind of have a team supporting you and helping you finesse your point of view. But when you work as a consultant, especially when you're independent, it's just yourself. You are your own thought leader.
Yeah.
You don't have a manager or team members to really bounce ideas off of. So I wanted to test this out and see what was I actually made of. Can I actually do this? Am I really a marketer?
Yeah.
I actually questioned that about myself.
And back then, and then when you were questioning yourself and testing this out, you need a client to test this, right?
Yeah.
How you got your first one? And
it was a yoga event. So I was at a yoga event, and some of the places that I spent the most money during this time was really in the wellness space, because living also in a very hectic city, I needed to find small ways that I can retreat and just kind of go away and not think about work. And I was just really friendly that day, and I was speaking with a couple people who were also attending, and one of the girls, she was interning at a small vegan cookie company.
Okay.
This woman, the founder, is a solopreneur. So she's running it all on her own. She's definitely killing it. I still keep in touch with her. But when we were talking, at that time, I was just thinking about consulting. And I, in a way, spoke it into existence. That was the first time I told anybody that I'm considering. And I was still working full-time, so this would be like a secret job on the side. It was my secret side hustle. And so she was like, I'll check in with the founder that I'm working with and see if she needs any work done. And within a matter of a week, I was in touch with the founder. We had a phone call. We, were jiving really well, a very good emotional chemistry that we had just over the phone. And that's how it started.
And things are happening.
Yeah. And it was a really great experience, because one, she was a founder who I could connect with personally. We're not sitting around and talking about our personal lives per se, but there was a genuineness about her, and that's when I started to realize, oh, these are the types of people who I really want to work with, because one, I believe in her.
Yeah.
Two, there's an authentic connection between us, and there's this level of trust. And that was a really important factor for me, because when you don't trust the people you work with, you put up a guard.
Yeah.
And I don't think you produce your best work in that way.
You just don't. You just hold yourself back.
Exactly. And it was a really big, I see it as a gift, because of the relationship that we were able to form, in a way she kind of created this safe space without her even knowing. She didn't know that I was completely new to this. She gave me the safe space and the opportunity for me to kind of flex different skill sets that I had and test out what are the parts on the marketing spectrum that I really enjoyed.
Because sometimes in a corporation, if you're kind of afraid of committing mistakes, right? Because you have to follow the process that the sort of corporate does or whatever.
Right.
And then you had kind of an opportunity to really test yourself out. This is amazing. And how would you say to people who want to pursue their own dream job, or not even their own dream job, but they want to find their purpose, what was your key takeaway from all of this? I like this word, key takeaway. It's just, it's just a nice word. But what was yours? And how would you tell people, well, if you want to find your own thing, is this a recipe?
I wish I could tell you. I wish I could tell you that there is a recipe.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's a detailed recipe I can share. But interestingly, working with brands, and today what I do is I work with businesses and actually craft the business purpose and then build a brand around it.
Okay.
I kind of did this reversed.
In you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Applying this framework that I use with these founders and applying it on myself. And I actually will talk about this tonight in my talk, but I call them the 4 Ps. And back then
but-
they used to call it the 4 Ps in marketing.
Oh yeah, but
Yeah,
not
they
for
still
people
do.
marketing, but
No, this is my own 4 Ps I
Okay.
came up with. So when I'm working with a founder, there's 4 buckets that I always go through, and this really starts to peel back the layers.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes founders will try to tell me their PR answer,
yeah.
and I'm like, no, we need to get in deep with this because otherwise I'm not going to give you what it is that you need, and you won't even realize how much power you hold in impacting the world.
Yeah.
So the first P is perspective. And this is really about understanding tensions and aspirations. And with that, on a human level, that's not really enough. You actually have to delve in even deeper and figure out what are your truest, biggest fears and motivations. And I think when you have an understanding of that, you understand the lens in which you perceive the world and perceive yourself and how you fit in. And you better understand how you navigate the world mentally and emotionally. So I think that's the first step in understanding yourself and trying to figure out your purpose is what are your fears, what are your motivations, what drives you, and what situations do you avoid because you're fearful of something.
So yeah, what will happen if your greatest fear would happen? Huh?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, what happened to you? Huh?
What happened to me?
Yeah.
So my biggest fear is actually the feeling of shame and the
Okay.
feeling of failure.
Oh wow.
And I know this because I studied something called the Enneagram. If you don't know about it, you can Google it. There's lots of resources about it. But I started to understand, wow, this whole time I thought I was just really great at a lot of things. But I was only great at a lot of the things that I was actually just good at. And the things that I knew I wouldn't be good at, I've always avoided. So I never really got to stretching myself and actually being able to understand, wow, my biggest fear is shame and failure because I always avoided situations that I would possibly fail. So in a way, I've just done things that made me
Yeah.
feel that I was
So
excelling at it.
you in a comfort bubble kind of a thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? You're doing so well, and in a way, that's a form of comfort.
Yeah.
You're not actually being courageous. You're settling. So yeah, that's the first piece. It's really understanding how you look at the world, how you perceive yourself. The second is principles, and that's really just your values.
Yeah.
And I think that's a hard question for a lot of us to answer. When someone asked me that, I had no idea how to answer it.
But how do you define your own values? Because most people have the values that they got from their parents, and sometimes it's different than your own values and based on your experience and based your studies or people who you're surrounded by. So is there a way you can differentiate and you can just separate what's your own true value and the values that you got from your family, from people who are next to you?
Yeah, and I think that came actually with me understanding my perspective, my lens, my fears, my motivations. Because once you understand your fears and motivations, you start to see the masks or the layers of ego that you've stacked on yourself. And it's essentially an illusionary identity. It's not actually real. It's not your soul, it's not your true self that you're able to uncover. And I think that's what happens is that when you're taking values from your family and your surroundings, yeah, that's great, it's a source of inspiration, but at the same time, it's a bit of social conditioning. You're kind of taking what's around you and adopting that as it is for yourself. But I think once you deconstruct your perspective and your lens, you can actually go back in your memory and think about the real experiences that really did make you feel happy and fulfilled. Not for the sake of your ego, but for the sake of what's coming from your heart. And that was kind of the moment for me where when I was thinking back, okay, what are the moments that I felt happy, I felt fulfilled? There were remarkable moments of this in which I wouldn't have really realized if I didn't understand that there was a lot of moments where I was just doing it for the sake of validation or the sake of acceptance because I didn't want to feel fear and shame. So it's kind of like I had to peel back that layer first, that first layer of perspective for me to understand what are my principles, what are my values. And then the third P is what I call power. And for a brand, power is really just what makes a brand great.
Yeah.
It's strength. It's kind of the secret sauce. And, for me, my secret sauce, again, I didn't know what it was because here I was thinking I was great at everything. And also when you work in corporate, it's very easy to mask what you're truly good at because once the company sees you excelling in one area, they kind of keep you there.
And
And so
and there's no sauce.
Exactly. No sauce at all. And, this was then, a progression from looking at my principles and my values. I started to see that where I was building my career, it was not the place where my values align. And my values are very much firmly grounded in authenticity, transparency, and trust. And I was building my life in a place that didn't align. And that's when I was like, okay, I need to figure out my secret sauce. Because if I'm going to move to another company or if I'm going to work for myself, I need to actually figure out what am I truly good at, my talents, and what do I enjoy. And that's when, I started testing myself and experimenting. I started to write because I wanted to be a writer when I was a kid.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, well, let me see if I'm actually good at it. I stopped because teachers tore my papers apart.
Now they
And
might
that
be
doesn't
reading
even
your
matter.
papers.
Yeah. And then the other thing I tried is, I was like, I love to help people. I love health. So let me go and get a certification in health coaching. I'm not actually pursuing that.
Okay.
But I did learn a lot of great skills taking courses in that, because I now have a way of asking questions that is quite provocative for people and getting them to think from different angles. And that's very helpful in my consulting business today.
Yeah.
And then the third thing, I already mentioned, I was consulting startups on the side to figure out, okay, am I good at this? Is marketing and branding something that I should be doing and continuing, and do I have something to offer? So that's how I figured out what my power was. And it was really just experimenting. And then the fourth P is people. And through my experimentation phase, I uncovered that my gift that I have within is really that I understand and know how to provoke people to think deeply and to help them articulate themselves. And once I figured that out, I was like, wow, I actually have something to offer people. And the reason brands exist today, besides that, it's to make money, they exist to serve people. And that's the most grounding part of my job. Once I forget the consumers, once I forget the people that the brand serves, it's just about the bottom line, profitability, it's about the sales. It's all logic, and the heart of it gets stripped away. And so, when I thought about this, I thought, gosh, how different would the world be if we actually thought of ourselves as maybe brands or coming from a standpoint of servitude where it's about people. We can have that same effect where we feel grounded and we feel that we're part of something much larger than ourselves. And that, I think, alone just brings a lot more meaning to life individually.
And we read the small document that we had from TEDx, and we saw that you enjoy working out, volunteering, and trying new restaurants these days. So,
Are you a foodie?
I'm a huge foodie. That's why I have to exercise.
So, being an independent consultant, how's your life like now? And you get time for all these. So, how does your typical day, except from 9 to 5, what does it look like?
It's a lot of honestly, it's sometimes hard on certain days when you wake up, because it's like, okay, I have to craft my day in an efficient way, but at the same time, I don't want to be on that hamster wheel like I was before.
Yeah.
So on a typical day, I wake up at an hour that I couldn't wake up at before because I would have to squeeze my workouts earlier. So I'll wake up maybe 6 o'clock, 6:30, which I guess is still kind of early.
Yeah, it is.
But before it would be like 4:35. I'd still go and exercise. But the great thing is that after I exercise now, I actually socialize with the people who I work out with.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I start my day. I don't have coworkers to go see anymore. And now I kind of rely on, these like-minded set of people who I work out with. And then, from there, some days I'll actually take some time in the morning and I'll come home and I'll meditate. And it just depends on what I need for that day. And more often than not, after I meditate, that's when I start to ground myself once again. And I'm able to go on with my day with a lens where everything is just better. It's better. I open my email and I have things I have to respond to. Normally, I have a big resistance of even opening my email. I don't know if it's because the conditioning that I had in the corporate world, where I was so scared to look at it. But I'm able to approach even small things like emails with this perspective of giving. And then I like to have my meetings fall between, I don't know, I'd say 11 to 3 o'clock if I have to have meetings.
Yeah.
And usually when I'm having meetings, sometimes it's with potential clients, sometimes it's with clients I'm already working with. And then depending on the day, I might go back home and or a coffee shop, and I work on whatever my actual work, or I have to finish responding to emails or whatnot. But it's very free-flowing. As you can tell, I can't even explain what a typical day looks like. The only things that are typical is me waking up and working out, possibly meditating, eat sometime between then. But everything else is kind of, I rely on a flow for myself. There are some days that I know, for instance, I normally take a pottery class on Wednesdays.
Okay.
I know to expect that on Wednesdays, I might not actually do anything at all for the rest of the day after my pottery class. And pottery, I might spend a few hours throwing on the wheel. But what I do know is that on Thursday, I will be in a flow. And I can crank out a lot of things just naturally. And I'm able to kind of ebb and flow my energy. And in a way, it's a bit of manipulation, but now I understand that there are certain activities where it kind of puts me in this Zen mode, and I totally trust that that's where I need to be, and I let it be.
So that break is very important so you can give you 200% next day.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And I get more done than
more done.
I would have if I was trying to force it the day before.
Okay.
So it's really about trusting myself. And to be honest with you, this whole TEDx process for me has been one of those processes where I had to really trust myself and tell myself I don't have a boss I have to run this by.
Yeah.
I have to trust myself that this is my process and that whatever is going to happen, it's just a manifestation of all the subconscious work that I must have been doing in the past 6 months.
Yeah, well deserved.
That's true.
And just coming back real quick to your routine and to your habits, I mean, some people say having your phone next to you when you're sleeping is like one of the worst mistakes. So do you have any of these key habits or anything like this that you'd like to share with us?
Yes, I would like to say that I don't sleep with my phone next to me, but I do. I totally do. And it actually depends on the season for me. And by season, I just mean where I am mentally.
Yeah.
I think because today my mental state of mind is just in a better place, it's okay for me to have my phone next to me, but also have the control to not touch it.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of the new updates on iPhone where you can have settings.
Yeah.
You know,
Screen time. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I got so mad at it. It says, well, George, you've been 4 hours in screen time average this week. You got to improve that.
George,
Yeah.
reduce that, man. Reduce using your phone.
I average about 4 to 6 hours depending on the day.
See, people be tagging me memes, you know. So the whole day there.
Yeah. So I think that really screen time is probably the biggest culprit in my life that kind of distracts me. So I do try to stay off of my phone, and I do try to abide to my screen time moments.
Yeah.
I think honestly, Instagram is a big time sucker, and it's that infinite scrolling. Gosh, whoever invented that, he knows that that was not for a good thing. For us.
There's no other posts left. It's just going on.
Yeah, exactly. So even with that, I have some exercise that I do for myself where I only look at the first 5 posts.
What about stories? The stories also.
Stories. So I don't actually consume a lot of stories. If anything,
really?
I do a lot of outputting. So I think that's also the difference too. Is it creation or consuming?
Yeah.
And I tend to try to lean on the creation side. But even on the creation side, I try to ensure that it's something that's meaningful to me. Meaningful to me and would be helpful for others. So, okay, admittedly, I also do a lot of food posts, but I think it's food porn. Everybody loves food porn. So I try to be mindful of what I'm posting, if I am at all, and what I'm consuming.
Yeah.
So I don't really have any hard and fast tips, besides that you should actually get 7 to 9 hours of sleep.
7 to 9 hours.
Yeah. There's only a small percentage of people in the world who actually can thrive off of less than that.
You can exclude students.
Yeah, exactly. So I think 7 to 9 hours of sleep is crucial, and I actually aim for that, and now I can actually get it. But there's a huge difference.
So you go to bed very early, in order to wake up at 6:30, for example.
Yeah.
Is there? Sorry to ask this, but I'm very curious. In books, or like books, I believe you read Tim Ferriss' 4 Hours Work Week when you were passing through your Find Your Purpose, or even Starting with Why, Simon Sinek. Is there any book that did you recommend for people who are really trying to find their purpose?
Yeah, I do read a lot of books. Honestly, I'm such a slow reader, though. It takes me a while for me to get through them. I have to say that some of the most profound books are not necessarily the ones that are about productivity. So, for instance, like Tim Ferriss' 4 Hour Work Week, I actually stayed away from reading that. I have not read it. Okay. Tool of Times I haven't read. And it's because I already am someone who thrives off of feeling productive. Yeah. But that's that hamster wheel effect for me. So it's actually not good for me to continue, trying to figure out ways to be more productive. Okay. I think I'm already pretty skilled in that. I actually have to slow down. So the book that I really enjoyed reading, and one that I will continually go back to, is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
I think that it's quite a bit more spiritually based. But that's the side of me that I always forget, because my head's always in the past and in the future. In the past, because I have regrets.
Yeah.
For someone who fears a lot of shame, you know,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I don't want to make that mistake again. And in the future, because I plan, I'm like, go, go, go.
Yeah.
You know, it's
We're good.
yeah, that's the
Yeah.
way that a lot of us are wired. And I think reading The Power of Now made me really realize the power of now.
Yeah.
That whatever is happening in this moment is where I'm supposed to be, and it's
Yeah.
the most perfect second.
Yeah, that tackles
No
a bit.
matter what.
Yeah, that tackles a bit of Stoicism, Seneca, and all these amazing philosophers.
Yeah.
So we're coming to the end of the episode, unfortunately, and I'd like to ask a few questions just to wrap everything up.
Sure.
So, is there someone you look up to?
You know, that's a really great question, because I think I have looked up to so many people that I lost my own identity.
Oh wow.
I adopted
Yeah.
other people's philosophies of life, other people's ways of living, and I called it my own, because in my head, that is someone who is successful, someone who is valuable. So I've kind of gotten rid of
Oh, you
those
just-
ideas now.
Those
Yeah,
are-
so it's not that I admire a lot of people, but in
Yeah.
terms of looking up to them as a source of inspiration, I actually try to put myself in solitude on that.
Okay.
But more recently, someone who I brought back into my memories more frequently is actually my grandmother,
Uh huh.
because she was a nurse. I didn't know her as a nurse. She was just my grandmother by the time I was born. But the way that she really approached her daily life, she was quite religious and spiritual, and she started her day with prayer, singing hymns. That's what I woke up to as a child. And again, grounding herself. And I think through that, whatever she did came from love. It was unconditional. And there was nothing that was going to be too hard for her in that day. And just how she treated other people, I think, made everyone feel so special and so seen.
Oh.
And to me, that is something that I constantly try to work on, because my head automatically just goes to, okay, do I look like a fool right now? And I forget, you know, this is not about me,
Yeah.
this is about someone else.
Yeah.
And so that's someone who I really consider a role model in terms of how she approached life, how she treated people. And I think that is something that's really important.
And the second question, as you spent 8 years in the 9-to-5 corporate world, if you had a chance, would you go back in time and do it all again? Or would you start as a consultant, independent consultant from the beginning? You know?
I would totally go back and do it again.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I would. There's a lot of value that you can learn, I think, about, well, one, I don't know if I necessarily learned a ton about myself, but essentially I built data points for me to get to this point and reflect back on. And I also think that having experience in a setting where there's so many different types of people, again, data points for me to look back on and think about, okay, why was my interaction with this person so hostile? And actually, it wasn't about them, it was about me. And it was actually a perspective where I can look back to and think, oh, it's because I was triggered, and it stems back all the way in my
Just like-
childhood.
yeah.
You know, it's just,
Yeah.
again, data points. I would totally do it again.
Yeah.
And then admittedly, as a consultant, it helps to have some of these big names
Yeah,
on
yeah.
your resume, and
Yeah,
people trust you, and you know you can get the
Yeah.
job done.
We've been delighted to have you here in the episode. We hope to have you here another time. And thank you so much for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.